What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Play to Win. And I did some post draft PPR rankings, just the first round so far. And I put that article up yesterday. And I wanted to just talk through some stuff maybe I didn't go through on the article and stuff that I thought about after I wrote it down. So we'll just start off right off the bat. My first one is LeVeon Bell here. They have him at number three. So just as a reminder of what happened, the injury concern is definitely there. So there's no, if you guys had wanted to be more risk adverse and went for a wide receiver, completely understand that. I might even end up doing that myself. But this is just a reminder because he has gotten injured in the last 2 years, and one of them, thankfully, was at the end of the season. That was the year I had Le'Veon. He did great for me in 2014. 2015, though, his stats there. This is still a reminder of how much they use him. Um, that every just about every game here, he's getting about 20 rush attempts and somewhere around 4 to 8 passing attempts. And what that means is just touchdowns. It's well over 20 a game. You barely ever get that in a high-powered offense. I mean, when I say barely, I mean like you get it in the main guys. The APs, the Todd Gurley, Le'Veon Bell, David Johnson will probably get it this year too. Maybe even Lamar Miller. But he does. I mean, if you look at the stat line in 2014, has some monster games that can win you. So it's just a reminder. It's going to be very hard for me to not pick Le'Veon Bell. There will have to be some injury concerns and him not be 100% healthy, and then I'll probably switch to the receivers. So the next one is Antonio Brown. You really don't have to talk about him much. If you see the yardage, you see the targets have increased every year, even at 181 from 2014. His yardage is just continuing to go, and yeah, there's not much to talk about with him. He's just a freak. He's been like the most consistent player that you can ask for as a wide receiver or any position for that matter. So that's why he's number one on the wide receivers. 10 plus touchdowns, getting close to 2,000 yards. Which regardless of what format you play, that's 200 points. So that's a big deal. So the next one on my rankings, and they also have it as far as order of the wide receivers, Julio Jones. He basically, same sentiment as Antonio Brown. The difference is that Julio a few years ago had that foot injury, the Jones fracture, and after that he just skyrocketed back up. 133, 136 catches, close to 2,000 yards. If you're in a PPR, let's just average that down a little bit. That's like 225 points right there without touchdowns. So yeah, Julio's a big time. If the Falcons can figure out just a little bit more on offense, um, and running game started off really good and then kind of tapered off at the end. So if he, has a little bit of help with Mohamed Sanu coming in on the other side of him, he. I don't think he's actually hit his ceiling there, so he would be one to go after for sure. Then the next one here, looks like they have Le'Veon Bell after that, as far as the Fantasy Pro rankings, and then David Johnson after that. And I'll talk about David Johnson a little bit here, but I'm just going to go follow down my rankings. So OBJ is 5, and I have him at 4, so it's pretty much a wash. And you can just see in 2 years here, he's been very consistent. He's getting over 130 targets in both of his years. His rookie year, he didn't even play full games. He actually got suspended one game, so that's something to consider as well. 13 touchdowns. It's a big deal too, and close to 1,500 yards. And this is his third year, so he hasn't hit his ceiling yet. So that would be that'd be another reason why he's up there. So the next one is I have as AP, and AP is all the way down at 11 there. So when you come through and see this, the biggest knock on AP is his age. He's almost in the league for about 10 years now. A lot of wear and tear on that. You see that 200, 300, 300, 200. Like he's a model for consistency. Look at the touchdowns on top of it. He's gonna get that 10 touchdowns, that double digit receiving. The reason why he gets a little bit of a knockdown is that the highest reception he had is 43, which is really good, right? That was pretty much his like breakout year there, almost 300 points, and that's really the only reason why I have him below that much lower than Le'Veon Bell. The other factor would be the offense difference, right? The Vikings go strictly through AP, so what that does, that limits their. They don't. He doesn't have Antonio Brown on the other side. Like last year, he had Martavius Bryant. This is Le'Veon Bell. So he has all these threats on the outside, and Adrian Peterson doesn't have that. So that's why he's a little bit of a step down, and he's also getting up there in age. So the next one here is Jamal Charles, and they are pretty down on him. 14 on Fantasy Pros as far as the average, and when it comes to consistency, I mean, look at the average yards per carry is above 5 for his career, and that goes into what we're at like 8 years now. So you see there are some red flags there, right? There's the injury in 2011, 2015 as well. So there definitely are some red flags there. But you see kind of the ceiling year there, which is this 2013, where he gets 312 points. That's better than any season that Adrian Peterson had, and how high we all hold Adrian Peterson in regard. So he is more fragile, right? But they are the offense. Andy Reid, runs the ball, he pounds the ball. The running backs, I didn't pull up any stats on that, but I would be surprised if they had less than 30 targets as a unit. Not targets, touches a game. So he's also that one that if he slips down into the second round, you end up with a wide receiver one, like Allen Robinson, AJ Green, Des Bryant, and you can pick up Jamal Charles on the way around. If you're into a little bit more of the risky pick, um, that could pay dividends there. So I really like him though. I mean, if you see the stats here, um, the touchdowns, the catches are real big there, right? The 70 points or 70 catches. So yeah, I definitely like Charles. Right after the big two running backs, the AP and the Le'Veon Bell, and then we have Des Bryant, and Des is just, they call him touchdown monster, and you see why here. Rookie year 6, 9, 12, all the way down. He was injured most of last year, and I think that's part of his ranking. The reason why he has a step down. Um, he's not as efficient as those top receivers you see with 160, and arguably his most targeted year. He had 160 targets and only 93 receptions. The other wide receivers there are more efficient with that, and but he will make it up on the touchdowns. You see that that's a pretty consistent numbers there, well over 200, or not well over, above 200, and for 3 years straight. And it'd be hard to argue that he wouldn't have done that last year, assuming that well, Romo got hurt, so maybe it's a little bit hard to argue, but he's a monster. No, you can't single cover him, and just a few years ago he was up there with the Megatron, the Antonio Brown. You know, People just forgot it's like a recency bias thing. So I'll definitely be. I think be having quite a bit of shares of Dez this year. And so Todd Gurley's next year. So it's one of the ones that are actually lined up pretty well. I'm just going to use this as reference. I'm pretty much just going by my guide here. So he only played 13 games, 13 out of the 16. And the first game, they eased him into it. You can see he only had 6 touches, 1 target. And then as you go down here, 30, 20, 20. This is a workhorse back, and he's on. They called him a generational talent. They had comparisons to Adrian Peterson, and you saw last year, to do this in a rookie year, a limited year with 13 games, 10 touchdowns. So he's the sky's the limit on this one, and I could see myself bumping him up because I really like everything that he does, and the Rams are trying to build around him, and they're trying to get better. Their quarterback situation can only get better from last year, so if there's just a little bit of help there for Gurley, then he can start, climbing more ranks and getting more points, more opportunities. So I do like Gurley. AJ Green, really consistent player. You can see here over 100 targets every year. He hasn't quite hit that 100 receptions, but you can see in the years here he got injured one year in 2014, and then every year, he's been right about 200 points. Last year was he ended up with 10 touchdowns, which may seem like a surprise, right? Because Tyler Eifert took all the other touchdowns, but he is, he's going to be undervalued, and he's somebody that you can pick up. So the next one here is DeAndre Hopkins. That's one of the big swings there. They have 6, and I had 10. So DeAndre Hopkins, I just feel like there's going to be a step down there. If you see the progression here, it goes from first 3 years, 93 targets, 127 to 192. And I don't know if I can see that 192 with all the additions they had. So Cecil Shorts, he's always hurt, so I don't really put too much stock there. Jalen Strong, though, Will Fuller is a first-round draft pick. Braxton Miller will be one of those gadget players that, does everything. So and then I'm not even talking about, Lamar Miller, who's added in, who should be an increase in what they had last year. And I think back to the Arian Foster days, to where, he was getting 20, 30 touches a game. And if Lamar Miller can do 60, 75% of that, then he's going to take away a lot of these additional touches out there, to where you have a quarterback that's not trying to have a balanced offense. They're just throwing it up to their best player, and I feel like that's what it was last year. So that might not be the greatest argument, but there's a lot of new moving factors into the Texans with all that free agency, all the rookies, all the changes. So that is something that if you're a little bit more risk adverse, you'd probably stay away from there. I would, easily take like a Dez over DeAndre. AJ Green as well. That's that long-term working relationship with, Romo and Dez and Dalton and AJ Green. So then we got David Johnson here. You can see his numbers are basically, ironically, like his rushing and his receiving, right, are pretty close, and it's going to be skewed because he was used as, like a third down back for the first half of the season. You can see right about here where Chris Johnson got hurt because his rushing attempts goes up pretty dramatically, and then he's he was getting right about the 100 yards per game area, and then he was also adding in 20, 30, 40, and a real big game against Philly there. So he has just a ton of upside. He probably has the most upside in this draft here, because of the variables. Like, you don't know how they're going to use him. You don't know if that's going to be consistent, 20 touches. Chris Johnson's coming back, and he's just one of those more riskier players. It's a boomer bust. I feel like David Johnson's just a boomer bust. He's either going to, push you into the playoffs, potentially win the league, or he's going to be that C.J. Anderson, that Monte Ball, with a better skill set, because he's a better player than those two. And then the last one here is Gronk. Really don't like drafting tight ends that early. But you could argue, if you like the no RB strategy, to where you get, two or three wide receivers right off the bat, that you could end up with Gronk in, say, like the second round, something like that. And this is why here, 10 touchdowns. He's up there. Like, he had one injury year. I guess I should say two, because he didn't finish all those games. And he's just a lot better than the rest of the tight ends consistently over the last few years. It used to be him and Jimmy Graham. Jimmy Graham got hurt. Now it's him and Jordan Reed, and he's been that consistent number one tight end, and he wins you weeks. Week one there, 30 points, and look at the end, like, in I guess it's not fantasy related, but 20 points. That discrepancy when you're facing somebody, that has, say, like a Dwayne Allen, or, like, a lower tier tight end. It's a big difference between, potentially 10, 15 points that'll win you a week. So yeah, this is my first shot at the rankings of the first round here. Even after going through it, even talking through it, I feel like there's going to be three or four guys that are going to be moving around as the season goes, even without barring any injury or anything like that. I feel like there's going to be some movement. I'll probably get warmer on people like Todd Gurley. I'll probably get a little warmer. Jamal Charles, I might get a little bit cold on, just with that injury history and that wanting to take less of a risk. And David Johnson, I can warm up on too. And you just never know. So if hopefully the video helps you guys at all, listening to my ramblings, and I'll have a lot more videos coming through for the rest of the summer up until draft time. All right, so good luck, and subscribe if you guys like the videos. Later.